On a cold February morning in 2023, the quiet suburban calm of Herndon, Virginia, shattered with a frantic 911 call. 22-year-old Brazilian au pair Juliana Perez Magalhães urgently reported a violent attack at the Banfield residence. Her voice, panicked and shaky, painted a scene of chaos and danger. Two people gravely injured with blood pooling in the wake of violence. When officers arrived, the scene before them was one they would never forget. In the home's basement, the lifeless body of Joe Ryan, a 39-year-old man, lay on the floor, riddled with gunshot wounds to the head and chest. Upstairs, they found Christine Banfield, a 37-year-old pediatric nurse, barely clinging to life. Stab wounds to her neck had left her critically injured. Emergency responders rushed her to the hospital, but despite their best efforts, Christine succumbed to her injuries later that day. News of the tragedy swept through the tight-knit community like wildfire, leaving residents stunned. The Banfields were a well-known family. Christine was a beloved figure, a skilled and compassionate pediatric nurse who worked tirelessly to care for critically ill children. Her kindness and calm demeanor were qualities colleagues and friends admired deeply. To her family and friends, she was not just a dedicated professional, but a loving mother who put her children's needs above all else. Christine's husband, Brendan Banfield, added to the family's outward image of success and stability. Brendan, a federal agent with the IRS's Criminal Investigation Division, commanded respect in his field. Together, they appeared to have a picture-perfect suburban life, attending barbecues, hosting holiday gatherings, and sharing snapshots of their happy family vacations on social media. To anyone looking in, the Banfields seemed like the embodiment of harmony and achievement. But beneath the surface of their seemingly idyllic life, cracks were forming in their relationship. Christine's friends had noticed subtle changes over time: Brendan's frequent absences, his distant demeanor, and Christine's growing unease in their interactions. Brendan's long hours and demanding career created strain, and his emotional unavailability began to weigh on Christine. She worked hard to keep the family together, pouring her energy into her children and trying to maintain a sense of normalcy. Into this already fragile dynamic stepped Juliana Perez Magalhães, a bright-eyed au pair from Brazil who had joined the Banfield household less than a year earlier. Hired through a cultural exchange program to help care for the children, Juliana quickly became part of the family. Christine welcomed her into their lives wholeheartedly, treating her not just as an employee, but as a friend and confidante. The young au pair attended family outings, shared meals with them, and even celebrated holidays as if she were a member of the household. But behind the closed doors of the Banfield home, trust was being shattered. Brendan and Juliana began a clandestine affair, exploiting Christine's trust and goodwill. What started as a subtle connection between Brendan and Juliana soon grew into something far more sinister: a toxic partnership fueled by secrecy and betrayal. By the fall of 2022, the affair between Brendan Banfield and Juliana Magalhães had fully blossomed, hidden in the shadows of the Banfield household. Christine, preoccupied with her demanding job and her role as a mother, was oblivious to the deception brewing under her roof. For Brendan, the affair seemed to offer an escape from the pressures of his marriage and career. For Juliana, who was far from home and likely feeling isolated, the relationship may have felt like a forbidden thrill. But their connection quickly morphed into something darker, something dangerous. As their relationship deepened, Brendan began expressing dissatisfaction with his marriage to Christine. To Juliana, he confided a chilling desire to be rid of his wife entirely. These words marked the beginning of a calculated and sinister plot. What had started as an affair escalated into discussions of murder, fueled by Brendan's ambition and Juliana's misplaced loyalty to him. The two began to devise a plan that would not only eliminate Christine, but also benefit them financially and emotionally by removing any obstacles to their future together. Their plan took shape in the most insidious of ways. Brendan and Juliana created a fake profile on FetLife, a social networking site for people interested in alternative lifestyles. Posing as Christine, they used the profile to connect with a man named Joe Ryan, a 39-year-old from Springfield, Virginia. Joe was quiet, reserved, and unassuming, a man who kept to himself and had no way of knowing the danger he was walking into. Brendan and Juliana lured him into their web, arranging for him to come to the Banfield home under the guise of a consensual encounter involving restraints and other fetish-related activities. Joe believed he was meeting Christine. Instead, he was walking into a trap. February 24th, 2023 dawned like any other day for the Banfield household, but by nightfall, it would be marked by unspeakable violence. That evening, Joe Ryan arrived at the home as planned, completely unaware of the deadly intentions awaiting him. Brendan and Juliana had rehearsed their roles, ready to put their horrific plan into action. Brendan, leveraging his status as a federal agent, confronted Joe in the master bedroom where Christine was also present. Shouting, "Police," to create confusion and authority, Brendan wielded his service weapon. Without hesitation, he shot Joe multiple times, including fatal shots to the head and chest. Joe, unarmed and unaware, had no chance to defend himself. But Brendan's violence didn't end there. He turned his attention to Christine, who was stunned and horrified by what was happening. Brendan attacked her with a knife, stabbing her repeatedly in the neck. The wounds were deep and fatal, ensuring that she would not survive. Juliana, far from being a passive participant, played her own role in ensuring the plan's success. As Joe lay incapacitated, she fired another shot at him, sealing his fate. Once the murders were complete, Brendan and Juliana immediately set about staging the crime scene. The goal was to make it appear as though Joe Ryan had attacked Christine in a violent rage, prompting Brendan to intervene in defense of his wife. Blood was spattered across the bedroom, and Christine's injuries were consistent with a chaotic struggle. But despite their efforts to create the illusion of a home invasion gone wrong, there was one factor they had not accounted for: the thoroughness of forensic investigation. Juliana made the 911 call that night, sounding panicked and distraught as she reported the violent attack. She portrayed herself as a hero, claiming that Joe had attacked Christine and that Brendan had acted valiantly to protect his family. Her narrative was carefully crafted to align with the staged scene. However, the evidence would soon tell a very different story. As detectives began their investigation into the events of February 24th, 2023, inconsistencies in Juliana Magalhães' account quickly began to surface. At first glance, the crime scene appeared chaotic, supporting her story of a violent struggle with an intruder. However, a deeper examination revealed troubling details that didn't align with her narrative. The lack of any signs of forced entry was the first red flag for investigators. If Joe Ryan had truly broken into the Banfield home to attack Christine, there would have been evidence of a break-in, damaged locks, broken windows, or other signs of forced access. Instead, the house showed no such indications. Furthermore, forensic evidence at the scene told a much darker and more deliberate story. Blood spatter patterns, ballistic evidence, and the positioning of the bodies contradicted the chaotic struggle that Juliana described. The patterns suggested calculated and precise acts of violence rather than a spontaneous or defensive altercation. Joe Ryan's wounds, multiple gunshots to the head and chest, indicated that he had been ambushed and executed, not overpowered during a fight. Christine's stab wounds were similarly deliberate, pointing to a targeted attack rather than a defensive scuffle. These details painted a picture of premeditated murder rather than the accidental tragedy Juliana had described. Digital evidence provided the final pieces of the puzzle. Detectives uncovered text messages, emails, and call logs that revealed the truth about Brendan and Juliana's relationship. Their affair, which they had tried to keep hidden, was now exposed in explicit detail. Investigators also uncovered evidence of their communication with Joe Ryan through the fake FetLife profile. The messages left no doubt Brendan and Juliana had orchestrated the meeting with Joe as part of their plan to murder both him and Christine. With this damning evidence in hand, authorities brought both Brendan and Juliana in for questioning. While Brendan maintained his innocence, Juliana's carefully constructed story began to unravel under pressure. The weight of the forensic evidence and the digital trail left behind by her and Brendan became impossible to refute. Presented with the undeniable truth, Juliana eventually confessed to her role in the plot. She admitted that she and Brendan had planned the murders for months, exploiting Joe Ryan as an unwitting pawn in their scheme to eliminate Christine. In her confession, Juliana portrayed Brendan as the mastermind, claiming that he had manipulated and pressured her into participating. She agreed to cooperate with authorities in exchange for a reduced sentence, a decision that would prove critical in bringing Brendan to justice. News of the affair and the murders rocked the Herndon community. Residents who had once admired the Banfield family as the epitome of suburban success were now grappling with the horrifying reality of what had transpired within their home. Brendan, a federal agent sworn to uphold the law, had violated the very principles he was entrusted to protect. Juliana, a young woman welcomed into the family as a caregiver, had betrayed that trust in the most devastating way. As the investigation continued, Brendan was charged with multiple counts, including first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and the use of a firearm in the commission of a felony. Meanwhile, Juliana faced charges of manslaughter and conspiracy. Her decision to testify against Brendan, while controversial, provided prosecutors with the detailed account they needed to piece together the full story. The trial of Brendan Banfield unfolded as one of the most shocking and publicized cases in Virginia's recent history. By the time it began in late 2024, the nation was captivated by the intricate web of betrayal, manipulation, and violence. Brendan, once a respected federal agent and family man, now faced charges of first-degree murder, conspiracy, and multiple felonies, with the prosecution seeking life imprisonment without parole. The courtroom was filled with tension as prosecutors meticulously laid out their case against Brendan. Their strategy relied heavily on the mountain of evidence gathered during the investigation: digital communications, forensic analysis, and the testimony of Juliana Magalhães, who had agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. Each new piece of evidence painted Brendan as a man who had meticulously planned and executed a heinous crime. Text messages between Brendan and Juliana revealed their intimate relationship and their shared frustrations about Christine. The conversations included chilling discussions about their plans to murder both Christine and Joe Ryan. The prosecution highlighted how Brendan had leveraged his position of authority as a federal agent to carry out the plan, weaponizing trust and power to create the illusion of a heroic act gone wrong. Forensic evidence took center stage as experts described how the blood patterns and ballistic trajectories proved that Joe Ryan had been ambushed rather than engaged in a struggle. Christine's injuries, multiple deep stab wounds to her neck, were also consistent with a deliberate attack rather than self-defense. This evidence directly contradicted Brendan and Juliana's initial narrative of a home invasion gone wrong. The prosecution's star witness, Juliana Magalhães, delivered damning testimony. Over several days, she recounted the affair, Brendan's manipulation, and the months of planning leading up to the murders. While her involvement in the crime was undeniable, Juliana positioned herself as someone who had been coerced and controlled by Brendan's authority and influence. Her testimony, though controversial, provided the court with a chilling look into Brendan's calculated mind and his ability to exploit those around him. Christine's family attended every day of the trial, their grief palpable as they listened to the brutal details of her death. Friends and colleagues from her hospital also came to support her memory, describing her as a compassionate and selfless individual whose life had been cruelly cut short. Their presence in the courtroom served as a poignant reminder of the devastating human cost of Brendan and Juliana's actions. The defense attempted to discredit Juliana's testimony, painting her as a willing participant in the crime who was now shifting blame to reduce her sentence. They argued that Brendan had not premeditated the murders and that the events of February 24, 2023 were a chaotic accident rather than a calculated plot. However, the overwhelming evidence and the prosecution's carefully constructed case left little room for doubt. In September 2024, after weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury delivered its verdict. Brendan Banfield was found guilty on all counts, including first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. As the sentence was read, the courtroom was silent, except for the quiet sobs of Christine's family. The conviction brought a measure of justice, but it could not erase the pain of their loss. For Juliana, her cooperation with prosecutors led to a plea deal. She was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and conspiracy charges, resulting in a significantly reduced sentence. Her testimony had been instrumental in securing Brendan's conviction, but her role in the murders left her future uncertain. Public opinion remained divided. Some viewed her as a victim manipulated by Brendan, while others saw her as an equal accomplice in the horrifying crime. With Brendan Banfield convicted and sentenced to life in prison, the aftermath of the tragedy continued to ripple through the Herndon community and beyond. The trial had brought closure to Christine's family in the form of justice, but it also opened wounds that would take years to heal. For Christine's children, the reality of life without their mother and the betrayal by their father was a burden they would carry forever. Community efforts rallied around the children, offering emotional and financial support. Extended family members stepped in to provide a sense of stability and normalcy in their lives. Local organizations and neighbors organized fundraisers to ensure the children had access to therapy, education, and opportunities to heal. For those closest to Christine, supporting her children became a way to honor her legacy. Meanwhile, Juliana Magalhães faced the consequences of her actions. Although she had cooperated with prosecutors and secured a reduced sentence, her future was uncertain. In March 2025, she was formally sentenced to time served for her role in the murder of Joe Ryan, along with probation and mandatory counseling. Her plea deal required her continued cooperation with authorities, and the conditions of her release were strict. While some viewed her as a victim manipulated by Brendan, others saw her actions as inexcusable, regardless of her circumstances. The media frenzy surrounding the case eventually began to fade, but its impact on the Herndon community lingered. For months, the residents struggled to reconcile the image of the Banfields as a model suburban family with the horrifying reality of what had transpired. Community leaders organized counseling and support groups to address the trauma and to help rebuild trust within the neighborhood. Forensic psychologists who analyzed the case pointed to Brendan's calculated nature as a hallmark of narcissistic and sociopathic tendencies. His ability to project an image of control and success while orchestrating such a heinous crime revealed a chilling duality. Juliana's involvement, while less dominant, showcased the complexities of human behavior under pressure and manipulation. The case became a case study for criminal psychology, with professionals examining the dynamics between the conspirators and the motivations that drove them to commit such brutal acts. In the years following the tragedy, Christine's family worked tirelessly to turn their grief into advocacy. They collaborated with organizations focused on domestic violence awareness and prevention, using their platform to share Christine's story as a cautionary tale about betrayal and the hidden dangers within relationships.